Happy New Year, everyone, and welcome to the live China EVs and More podcast. We will open the room up at around the 40-minute mark to anyone who's keen to ask us any questions. What Lei and I discussed today is based on our opinions and should not be taken as investment advice. In the next hour or so, my
New Year jitters.
New Year, man. I'm like nervous again.
Why?
No, I'm not nervous. I'm just joking. I'm just kind of out of it. For those that are new to the show, welcome. And to our loyal listeners, welcome back. We ask that you please smash that subscribe and like button. And please, if you have any questions or comments, post them into the YouTube chat or the LinkedIn chat. I'm confident that Lei and I are two of the most, and this is where it's really important, Lei, because I think everyone has woken up globally to what's going on in China, especially now that Tesla has their numbers in. So it's our job, more important than ever, to keep everybody up to date. My name is Tu Li. I am the managing director at Sinoauto Insights, a global management consultancy that helps organizations bring innovative and tech-focused products and services to the transportation and mobility sector. I write a free weekly newsletter that we pull many of our discussion topics from. You can sign up for it at sinoautoinsights.substack.com, which of course I encourage you all to do. A well-rested Lei from his long trip back from Beijing. Happy New Year. 新年快乐. Chúc mừng năm mới. Can you please introduce yourself, Lei? Welcome to 2025.
新年好，新年好. Happy New Year. This is your co-host Lei Xing, former chief editor of China Auto Review, and this is episode number 193. Happy New Year to everyone again.
So we haven't been on for almost 3 weeks, 2.5 weeks?
2 weeks. 2 weeks. Last time we talked was December 20th.
So hold on. Let me first, before we get to the year in review, I think you made a quick trip to Guangzhou. Can you tell us about that trip?
Yeah, I just NIO Day 2024, quite memorable because it was my second time attending this event, which I would call a industry event, really outside of the Beijing, Shanghai auto shows. It's a pretty darn big event because
22,000, man.
What was that?
22,000.
22,000 users, supplier representatives, investors, media. I think there were around 1,000 media alone. Met some of the China KOLs. Oh, Happy New Year from Jeffrey. So that's pretty good.
That's a new feature. So I just turned it on and all this stuff pops up.
Whom I met, for the first time. A big fan of NIO, obviously. And some of the China KOLs, Elliot, Will, Mark, Toby, Afonso, Marcel. And
I'm bummed I wasn't there, obviously. So
well, you'll be there next time. This year.
Yes, this year.
Yeah, so one of the major events, I say it's major because it's not an overstatement to say that every competitor in the industry in China and globally was tuning in. And especially our Mercedes PR friends, they cringed at the comparison of the NIO ET9 active suspension versus the Maybach, which was shaking violently. And obviously the Firefly brand dunking on Mini and Smart. Yeah, so I think that was and NIO kind of ended with a bang in the with the the December delivery numbers, which really, I mean, it's not a surprise that those numbers are ballooned at the end of the year, anyways. So what you're gonna see is in January and Q1, there will be a kind of a law from the high of 2024. Uh, but great event to meet and actually to be face to face with Li Bian and Qin Li Hong. I mean, they're probably one of the most approachable CEOs, very patient and very real. Um, I think the controversy was obviously surrounding the Firefly design. They expected that. They expected the kind of slow ramp of Envo, but I say
I would say slow, careful ramp.
yeah, yeah, and I say they're, I said this was the most important Neo Day to date because the stage is set. They're a three brand company. They want to double sales this year. They want to break even in 2026. Uh, Not easy to achieve given the bloodbath, which is my keyword for 2024. And yeah, quickly, just some of the thoughts.
So there are a couple observations that I made. So there were people, engineers, that were saying that this technology, the steady technology from ClearMotion is old Bose technology. It's actually not. It's software generated, and so we
Well,
had interviewed Zach Anderson,
sure.
the CTO, co-founder of ClearMotion. He has left the company, but we had talked to him extensively about it, and you know, none of that technology prior has really been commercialized in a big way, and I expect the ET9 to really be the first car to commercialize that, but then it will trickle down into other vehicles within the Neo family, but then also get copied by the premium brands and then the more mass market brands in a short time frame.
Yeah. And I think one of the, actually, if we get into the kind of the top news events of 2024, one of those uh, out of my top 10 was, we didn't get to talk about this the last time because it hadn't happened yet, was CATL's announcement of the kind of the standardized battery packs, number 20,
Mm-hmm.
number 25, uh, and announcement of several, I think it was 10 OEMs. Um, no Neo, at least not yet, but 10 OEMs in the kind of the lower tiered vehicles, A0 segment, smaller vehicles. And their plan was humongous. Their long term out was to have 30,000 to 40,000 battery swap stations. And Neo just opened its 3,000th in China. So 10x of what CATL wanted to do. So one
And
of
so
those top 10,
for our new
yeah.
viewers and listeners, CATL is the largest battery manufacturer in the world. Full stop.
Mm-hmm.
They control or hold about 37% global market share currently, mostly using LFP batteries. They supply virtually every legacy OEM in China, and they're starting to create a manufacturing footprint in Europe. They have partnerships announced with GM and Ford, although those that are supposed to be stood up in the United States have taken a bit of pushback. So, again, for the new listeners, I wanted to really pull back to some of the basic stuff, so you understand what
Yeah.
Lei is talking about.
And CATL is a frenemy to Neo because it supplies batteries to Neo. It is an investor in the battery asset company of NIO, and it is following NIO's battery swap legacy into expanding its own network. And there's still a question mark on whether they will collaborate on some of the future network. And the sense I got from Li Bin was this is still under discussion, so we're not ruling it out. The possible scenario that these stations they could be interoperable, but it's something to watch for. And that just shows you, I think, the battery swapping sweepstakes. I said that the CATL raises the stakes in the battery swapping sweepstakes by that announcement. A huge
We should also note, Lei, that Geely has a battery swapping system as well.
Yep, it's called
So-
the EE Power, which has an
So-
extensive network as well in China.
If we think about it and take a step back, that means that there are three major entities. NIO with the Envo brand Firefly, I believe, is using a separate swapping system. And so CATL, then Geely. Now, can we live with more than one standardized system? In China, probably. Not sure Europe or the United States could take more than one system. There's a company in the United States called Ample that's trying to commercialize swapping in the US. And they're gaining a bit of traction in Japan and have a pilot with Stellantis in Spain, I believe. So to Jeffrey's point, it looks like swapping is here to stay for sure in China, and it'll bleed into the rest of the world in some form, either through passenger vehicles or commercial vehicles within the next decade, likely.
And the way to look at this was the founder CEO of CATL, Robin Zeng. He gave an outlook, basically a third long-term out in China. A third of the infrastructure will be battery swapping, a third will be home charging, and a third will be public charging. So that gives you some idea of where battery swapping in the whole scheme of this kind of the infrastructure, which to me, I explain it as this kind of the main road on the ring roads in Beijing, and there's also the side road for those that live in Beijing and know what I'm talking about. And sometimes those side roads are important because they're faster compared to the main roads. And that side road is what I would put the battery swapping analogy.
Oftentimes,
yeah.
DD drivers or Chinese Uber drivers would jump on and off the main road and go to the Fulu because it was faster in certain parts of the ring roads.
Right. So I think that's how I would look at. I don't think it becomes mainstream, but I think it becomes a key important part of the whole infrastructure, charging infrastructure.
And I want to emphasize your point about a third. It's not either or.
Yeah.
NIO, you can still charge by plugging it in. Okay, it's just an and. Okay, you can swap and you can charge. So
yeah, as a matter of fact, all of their battery swap stations, more often than not, you will see a set of chargers next to it. So that's the way it goes. And then perhaps the other, there's a no-brainer on this one. Tesla just announced their year-end 2024 numbers. Shrank. You use the word shrink in the 2-4.
That post got a lot of attention. So,
well, Nobody stays on top forever.
So there was
Right?
one comment in the post that said, that they're basically flat. They didn't shrink. 1.8 to 1.78. Okay, so 23 was 1.8, 24 was 1.78.
It's a matter of 18,000 units. So 1.8 million, 1%, right? 18,000 units.
But I contrasted that with 41% growth for BYD, 50% growth for Li Auto. And so when the rest of the world is growing and you're flat, you're not keeping pace. That's the bottom line.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
And so as the Chinese market, let's not even talk about any of these other markets, Europe, the United States, they both grew too. They grew less than in previous years, but the numbers increased. So globally, clean energy vehicles grew, largely due to BYD. And so that's what I wanted to emphasize, just to be clear.
And again, the Tesla achieved that result thanks to steep incentives.
Non-price cut incentives.
Non-price cut plus a little bit of price cut at the end of
some
the year,
price cuts.
10,000 RMB. And which I say really the overall, really my number one news event is really China now is a 10 million NEV a year, 50% take rate. So more than half for 6 straight months, more than half the vehicles sold, including exports out of China, are NEVs.
And let's peel the layers of the onion back. I'm
Yeah,
going to give
and
you a
let
couple
me
reasons.
just add
Go
one
ahead.
more statistic that's mind-boggling is since we started this podcast in 2021, 21, 22, 23, and now 24, roughly 3 million NEVs were added to the total annual sales every year. 3 million, 6 million, 9 million. This year is going to be 13 million, including exports. And it seems I've seen some projections for 2025 is I've seen 15 million, I've seen 16 million. So the last 4 years have just been pretty crazy. Yeah.
And so the point I'd like to make about your growth numbers is that there are a number of great products at the mass market price level. Onvo and Mona, just to name two. And then that's not talking about the plethora of BYD vehicles under 25,000 US dollars. And the number of products really make it more attractive than buying an ICE vehicle. In the United States and Europe, there aren't as many products, so it's just not as attractive, or the choices aren't there and the prices are higher. And so now, do I believe that we're going to see 90%, like Li Bin said, in a couple of years, 90% take rate? I think that's going to be pretty challenging. But you can't deny the growth. And the third part of that, a lot of products at low prices, is that the Chinese government also continues to put its thumb on the scale. You had just tweeted that
Yep.
they're going to continue the cash for clunkers.
Most likely.
Can you talk about that a little bit?
Yeah, so I think it's worth mentioning how we got here, especially in 2024, was first of all, the tipping point has long passed. It's becoming very normal for you to consider an NEV. Second, just the availability of a variety of products on the market. Third, very important, is this kind of the cash for clunkers incentive that went into play toward the second half of the year. So the latest numbers I've seen is the number of applications submitted for trade-in or scrap. I think it's close to 6 million. Now, not all of those are registered yet, but these combination of reasons and factors just continuing to buoy the market to historical highs. And I think globally, China probably accounts rough more than 2/3 of the global sales of NEVs. That's probably a guesstimate. And again, the underlying factor is this push to drive consumption and improve the economy. And auto industry is a pillar industry of the economy. So you do see these trading programs and incentives geared toward, I think the two biggest industries are the autos and the electronics and appliances industry. Yeah.
And this also points to the Chinese government acknowledging weakness in the Chinese economy from a
And I
consumption
felt that.
standpoint. So
I felt that. I'll give you two examples. On Christmas Day, I was in the elevator and I asked a Meituan delivery guy, you must be busy the last 2 days. And he shook his head. No. We had dinner with a bunch of friends from my daughter's kindergarten at Jingdingxuan. I don't know the English name for it, but it's a popular restaurant chain on a Saturday evening. And they were telling me that it's pretty normal that it was not filled up. Usually it's filled up, but it was kind of lax.
here's
So,
a
I mean,
here's
yeah,
another anecdote, Lei.
yeah, but
Uh, good friend of ours, Xin.
yeah, he's in Beijing, I think.
So he sent me videos of the Rosewood Hotel. They have a club there.
Yeah,
And he was there for New Year's Eve having a few drinks with some friends. And it was crowded, but it wasn't like years past
yeah, yeah,
where it was just chock full of expats.
yeah.
And this is on New Year's Eve. So, and I went to Toronto to visit my friend Christian, who's the co-founder of Jing'e,
hmm
the brewery.
hmm
And he was there for his beer festival 8x8 in October, and I think you were there too, maybe.
Well, I was in
But
Toronto in earlier this year,
no, I'm
last year,
saying, were
March.
you in China in October or no?
Yes, I was.
Yeah. So he said that pollution levels when he was there were really high, and so
Well, this trip, I spent about 3.5 weeks, mostly in Beijing. It was pollution. I didn't see anything. It was pretty clear
no, he
every
was
day.
saying in October.
October, okay. No, right.
And so, but he's like us, Lao Beijing, recently moved back to London, or moved to London, but he said that the vibe is different.
It was.
Now,
Yes. Mm.
Shanghai is much closer to pre-COVID, but Beijing is still a ways away from
Yeah.
pre-COVID days.
Yeah.
That's what
Yeah.
I was told.
Yeah.
And,
Yeah.
in April when I was there, I felt it. Shanghai always has a bit
Ye-
more energy.
I
So,
think a good way to compare was I think I talked to some people in the industry and they do feel the energy was actually pretty high in Shanghai 2 years ago, not last year, because last year is 2024. But the Shanghai Auto Show 2023, I think that was actually pretty energetic because
oh yeah.
things right gotten back, and I got to go back, and a lot of foreigners got to go back. But and as you see, right, that they're now opening up the visa free to 10 days, 240 hours.
I was reading
Yeah.
that, and my friend who works in the travel industry over there was telling me that a lot of South Koreans just come for the weekend to
Yeah,
Shanghai
come for the
now.
weekend. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I saw that as well.
Because South Korea to Shanghai is probably four-ish hours.
I think
So it'd be
less than
like
that.
going, yeah, okay.
It's probably less
So
than that. So
was it 2 or 3 but
I don't know,
anyway,
2 3 hours. Yeah,
what I'm saying is that it's nothing to fly
yeah,
from South Korea
yeah,
to Shanghai.
no,
It's
yeah,
it'd be like uh New York to Chicago or something like that. And so for when you don't have to deal with the hassle of a visa, going to Shanghai and visiting one of the coolest cities in the world in less than 3 or 4 hours flight, it's worth it. So,
yeah, yeah.
hey, so we've spent a half an hour just kind of catching up, almost like personally. Let's go to the year in review and your top. I didn't rank them.
So,
It looks like you ranked them from
well,
one to
no,
10.
well, I kind of ranked them.
Okay.
So I talked about the market obviously running away. That was my number one. 10 million, 50% take rate. The other one I talked about was CATL raising the stakes in the sweepstakes. So that's two. Uh, and then number three, really, what can we say? Xiaomi. I think that we have to single out Xiaomi for what they did in 2024. Blew out all kinds of expectations. Blew out Ladrian's own expectations. 135,000 Su 7s. And they announced 300,000 for this year.
So
uh,
let me stop you there.
it,
In contrast, Xpeng, which is a 11-year-old company, sold 190,000 units
yeah.
in 2024.
The caveat is it's not an apples to apples comparison because Xiaomi has the brand equity, has
Sure.
the user base. I think the more significant thing was not that they um, did 135,000 in 9 months. I think the more significant thing is really Lei Jun went all in. I think he disclosed in a live stream that he spent 30 billion RMB to make this happen. Uh, the kind of the commitment to do it.
That's
Uh,
four-ish billion US
yeah.
dollars.
I think is really. I mean, when you put all the efforts, when you put the talent, when you do this in 3 years, 3.5 years, uh, it's pretty darn amazing.
And and
Uh,
and here's one of these things that uh, you know people bash analysts, some that we know, they kind of bash what's going on. They point to subsidies, blah blah blah. But if you think about just from a operation standpoint, manufacturing standpoint, Lou said they're not having manufacturing issues, but they slowly ramp. Rivian has had nothing but manufacturing issues, supply chain issues, and they're not building 130,000 units in 9 months. So there's lessons to be learned here by the Western automakers from the likes of a Xiaomi. Now, Xiaomi, they used to build handsets. They used to build much smaller consumer products, less complex,
I,
and so
I
that should
bought a
also be.
I bought a Xiaomi humidifier for 129 RMB. So what the heck?
So it's and what amazes me about Xiaomi, it's not about a premium thing, it's about a connected thing, because all these different products in your life, Xiaomi went from a handset brand to a lifestyle brand and have successfully moved into lifestyle mobility brand. And so that should be studied. The two things, the three companies at a minimum that should be studied by Western um, business analysts is how CATL got so big, how BYD became so successful, and Xiaomi's, and we're talking, Bloomberg had said last year there were 300 brands or 130 brands or something like that, still in China, slogging away trying to sell vehicles every month. How come Xiaomi now, set aside the brand, okay? Because yes, the familiarity, but there's a couple things going on. And me being the operations guy, Lay, I always point to they created the demand and they built to that demand. Okay. I think if they could even build more, they would sell more. But so it's amazing that they're so operationally efficient in such a short period of time. So
Yeah, and I think last year the memorable, I think Lei Jun became the online and offline traffic king of the industry. Beijing Auto Show was good example. We were there when they did the press conference. The entire hall that their booth was in was packed,
there
and
was like
uh,
50 people deep. Like
yeah,
if
uh,
you're way back there looking. So
and everywhere he went, there was commotion. There was an entourage. Uh, yeah, I mean, I think those were the memorable moments that we saw.
and
And
that's also why less so Li Xiang, but He Xiaopeng, Li Bin, you see them more in the forefront on social because
yeah,
they're getting pulled into this because Lei Jun, who has this like ho hum kind of demeanor, right? But he spits venom, right? I mean, he's like this humble bragging. Oh, I would have never thought that we could build 130,000 units. Oh, I'm hoping that we can get to 300,000 units in 20. I mean, he's dropping the hammer in like
yeah,
the nicest way.
yeah,
So,
yeah, yeah, and yeah, it's definitely something to could be on a case at a business school, right? Because Apple
so
couldn't do it, Xiaomi did it.
please continue. Please continue.
And then which I think translates to the other one of my top 10 would be, I said bloodbath is my keyword of 2024, but I mean it to be a state of mind, not only the price
Actually,
war
let me
itself.
stop you there, Lay,
Yeah.
because there were a couple articles that I saw this week that said the price war is starting in 2025 because of a leaked
Well,
internal memo
He
from He
Xiaopeng, right?
Xiaopeng,
Yeah, yeah,
but that's wrong. The price war started in 2023
three. Yeah,
by Tesla. It's just a continuation and a dialing up of intensity. The price
yeah,
war started 2 years ago now.
yeah. So when I say the bloodbath, it's the price war. It's the state of mind being that these CEOs have to be out in the front to live stream, to sell, um, and guerrilla marketing, uh, dunking on others like Neil did. Those are very normal. And the interaction among and between the CEOs, He Xiaopeng and Li Bin sharing a bowl of sticky rice balls
Yeah.
ahead of the Neil Day, right? Those kind of things, uh, they're competitors, but they're also friends, and um,
They're pushing each other. I
they're
think there's a
pushing each
mutual
other.
respect.
Because Guangzhou is the home court of Expo, and I think those are all part of what I call the kind of the bloodbath for the good and the bad. It's the competition is not just on the products, it's not on the pricing, it's on the price wars, but other aspects of how you compete. That's you don't see that anywhere else in the world. Um, and
And you won't.
yeah, no,
And you will not.
yeah,
There will never be 130 EV brands in the
and
United States or Europe.
And the next top 10 event, because of the bloodbath, in 2024, we saw the sudden death of Jiyue, unfortunately. Very sad story.
So let me ask
The
you, Lei, you're there. Is it done?
Yeah, it's done. It's done. You can only
So there's
uh,
no trying to
ti-
raise capital.
no,
It's done.
no time to reminisce. Neta have not disclosed monthly delivery numbers for, I don't know, 3 or 4 months. The integration of Zeekr and Lincoln Co. Uh, so those is what I would see as signal to this early innings of industry consolidation, because the brand movement is, I think it's nearing the end, and going forward in this year we're going to see more um, integration of possibly brands, additional brands like
And
Zeekr and Lincoln Co.
and it's like a virus.
Yeah,
So once a few companies close up shop, you'll start to see this. What is going to be interesting is that the first 6 months of the year in China, they can probably hide their lack of sales because the market is pretty slow. At least this year, Chinese New Year is on January 29th, so we can expect us a very slow February and likely a very slow Q1,
Q1. Yeah,
and
always.
then as we move out of summer, it'll start to be exposed the companies that are really, really, really weak. Now, you and I always hear things, but I'm not saying we have the power of Marquez Brownlee, but we don't want to speculate too negatively on the rumors that we hear. But
But
you know,
yeah, and then you had, I mean, in the chart I posted of December and full year 2024 uh, sales rankings, it was obviously clear scale matters and the strong gets stronger. And if you can't do, I think the minimum for any brand is 10,000 a month and 100,000 a year. If you can't get there, forget it. You might as well just close shop. I think that's
late with the
right.
NEV sales volume
Yeah,
at
yeah,
50% take
yeah,
rate,
yeah.
I would say the minimum needs to be about 15 or 20.
15 and 20. Well, Neil got there 30,000 finally, but I think that might be an outlier. I think December, the caveat is you're going to see for a lot of the brands that got to record highs in December, January and February, and perhaps March will probably be
There,
low.
there's going to be a
Yeah,
hangover.
hangover, yeah. But still, um,
But what'll be interesting to see is the Onvo and Mona numbers.
right, right. These newer brands, and a company like Xbone, which had entirely different halves in 2024. The, right, it's sometimes it's hard to explain, but at the end of the day, when you have the right products,
Well,
it solves everything, doesn't it?
to your point, they came out swinging in Paris,
Yeah, yeah.
and they're going to have a presence in at CES, and so please continue. Any
Yeah.
other of your top 10?
Um, one company is a must mention, Huawei.
Okay.
They completed their brand foursome, but the bulk of their sales were
So
the
can
Ito.
you let's take a step back. Tell everybody what Huawei and HEMA is.
So Huawei and HEMA is this called Harmony Intelligent Mobility Alliance, where Huawei participates heavily into the development of these brands. Ito with Ceres, Luxeed with Cherry, Stellato with BIC Group, Maxtro with JAC Group.
Maestro, okay.
Um,
All
and
state-owned enterprises, by
all
the way.
state-owned enterprises. And the simple way to look at it is these are their contract manufacturers. But
Yes.
Huawei is really the tech inside, and they even go into design,
UX design,
styling, of these vehicles. And I told by
which makes it
far,
a little weird.
yeah, yeah, and I told by far accounts for the bulk of the sales because the other three brands are relatively new, and Huawei is becoming a formidable player in the extended range EVs and ADAS, the level 2 plus plus. They're probably a leader with Li Auto um, in that respect.
Here's an
The
aside
M9,
that I think we should remind people. At the Paris Motor Show, Ito had a huge presence, but did not make any announcements about entering the European market. Now, it's important to note that Huawei uh, has had sanctions slapped on them by the United States government, and so I think there's this. Uh, what's the right word to say? Um, any brands associated with Huawei are really probably hesitant to enter any foreign markets currently.
yeah, and I think they shook the industry the last couple of years, especially last year now, with four of these brands, and supposedly there could be more coming to add into this HEMA alliance. Um, who knows? But
Because for
the
Huawei, here's what's important. For Huawei, it's a data play.
yeah,
And so they want as many vehicles on the road, whether they're Luxeed, whether they're Maestro, whether they're Ito. For them, it's just a volume play.
yeah. But in the back of my mind, I question that every one of these brands will be successful. Um, because you're looking at Geely, and Geely is pulling back because they're a multi-brand group. NIO has become a multi-brand group, and
BYD, XPeng.
BYD, right? I mean, look at BYD. They're 4.25 million sold. 2 million came out of the Dynasty network. 1.94 million came out of the Ocean, and the remaining are the other three brands.
Which are rounding errors, basically.
Rounding errors, right? Then I think it's something operationally and managerially that needs to be looked at. Does more?
But we always knew, and BYD always knew that when you get into the more premium side, it takes time to create awareness, to build trust, and to dial in your products so that they're competitive with the rest. And especially because outside of China, tastes are different. You know, BYD might have a very good feel for what the Chinese consumer wants in the mass market, a little bit better um, understanding in the premium market, but it's brand new for them on the mass market and the premium side in Europe and in these other markets. That's why you see BYD being so successful, the BYD, the brand, being so successful in emerging markets because it hits the value proposition really on the head. And for Fang Chongbao from Yangwang to be successful in Europe, that could be a 10-year thing.
Yeah. And we can't talk about the Chinese auto market without talking about the foreign players. So one of my top 10 was the introduction of the Audi, not the four-ring brand, but the four-letter brand, which shows the foreign automakers they are taking actions to be relevant to try to be relevant, to try to survive. GM taking the 5 billion hit, Volkswagen announcing, the continuation of the Shanghai Volkswagen joint venture. They're making moves to survive, to be relevant. So that would be, given what's happening with Nissan and Honda, and all because of China.
Stellantis.
Stellantis.
I had a quick chat with Danny Lee from Bloomberg, and I alluded to what you had just said. The legacy automakers are doubling down on the China market. They feel that it's too important of a market for them to just leave and abandon. And so I said to Danny, I said, the only real solution long term is great, affordable products that provide value to the Chinese consumer. And then I said, and likely new management teams.
I think that window is really closing rapidly because for these foreign automakers, these plans won't materialize until 2026, at least from the product side, right? So this year we'll continue to see the onslaught of Lynk & Co 900, right? Just one of the new models being launched. That will continue to
and
push
that's the
every other
crazy
day.
thing. I think the mass market is already really, really crowded.
Yeah.
And so you're starting to see, and you and I talked about this. I think we were some of the first two people to talk about this, where price and doesn't define premium.
No.
The user experience defines premium in China, and the fit and finish of materials doesn't really define things, because some of these mass market vehicles, man, they like the Xiaomi SU7, it has a premium feel inside, and I don't know how long that'll last from a wear and tear standpoint, but for the folks that have an opportunity to jump inside a SU7 or SU7, a Xiaomi, you're gonna be impressed that it's a $30,000 car.
Yeah. And then quickly, my two other ones are AV related. One is the IPO, successive IPOs of Pony and WeRide, plus Horizon Robotics. The Hong Kong IPO, and Horizon Robotics is a NVIDIA competitor, and they will reach 10 million chips, ADAS chips, shipped probably by the end of Q1 this year. And the other big, I think in my mind, that happened in 2024 was this talk of end-to-end vision language model action being deployed, where parking to parking ADAS is being pushed out right now. And more recently, there's a new autonomous driving policy that came out in Beijing, which basically said allowing level 3 vehicles to be operated on roads. So I think the AVs, right, the robotaxi side of it, level 4, and the ADAS side of it, I think they're forever getting more blurry, because Li Auto
converging
was talking about launching a personal, is what GM Maribara said, personal autonomous vehicle with level 4 capability. And this was done, Li Xiang, he did a live stream for 3 days in a row where he said, in December, where he said Li Auto wants to be an AI company, and what they want to do is, in the future, when you buy a car, when you buy an EV, the goal is not to buy it to drive it. That's what he said.
So in other words, the goal is to be driven in it.
Yeah.
If you're reading between the lines.
I think that's my top 10.
And Lay, to add on to your point about this personal, this is where Elon having such a close relationship with Trump, maybe the United States really, how should I say this?
Accelerate, expedite.
Accelerates the experimentation of L3 ADAS, because if Trump defangs NHTSA and the Department of Transportation really creates autonomous vehicle friendly policies, ADAS friendly policies, we could see in the next 4 years a huge acceleration of that. Because if Tesla really leans into that, let's say the path is paved for more level 3 pilots and things like that, Tesla's going to push into it, and Super Cruise and Blue Cruise are going to have to really, really follow suit. Okay.
Yeah, and when you look at it, the same thing is going on in the U.S. and China, except Tesla is the only one doing it. Whereas in China, there's multiple Tesla wannabes doing it.
Multiple, and this is where it's important, because you said, and we talked about this in past episodes, that convergence means that a deep route, that a Pony is also getting into the passenger vehicle side.
Yeah, this parking space to parking space ADAS feature, there's at least 4 brands are pushing this out through OTAs: Xiaomi, XPeng, Li Auto, and Huawei.
And another way to say that is point to point.
Point to
parking
point,
space to parking space.
Yeah.
And then there's that article recently about DJI making a breakthrough in ADAS. And so I made it a point to say that BYD is one of DJI's major partners on the ADAS stuff. So,
and DJI supplies to some of the Volkswagen models.
Yes.
Yeah.
Now, let me go through my 2024 year in review. A couple of them have to do with BYD. Let's say BYD beats Honda and Ford in global sales. Now, those numbers haven't been finalized, but let's assume that BYD at 4.26 million units sold more than Honda and Ford last year. Okay, so they've increased, or they've moved up the charts from global sales standpoint. And remember that the majority of Honda and Ford sales are ICE, whereas BYD is all NEV. Cruise blows up. We had just talked about autonomous vehicles, and to your point, Lay, now there's Waymo, there's Tesla, and then everybody else in the United States or North America. And I'd like your help in adding to this list or giving me some color. I'll just say the losses, quote unquote. GM, Volkswagen, Stellantis with Carlos Tavares, Nissan now
mostly Nissan,
getting bailed out by Honda. GE, Porsche. Were there any other companies that we can think of that had major losses that were reconciled or at least acknowledged in 2024? Those were the companies that I thought of on the top of my head.
Well, those are the top ones I can think of. Neta, right?
Yep.
And then some others that were already zombies to begin with that we don't even have to mention.
iWays, right?
So, iWays, yeah.
My next one, VW and Rivian. That partnership, I think, is significant.
Pretty huge. Yeah.
Trump wins. That is really going to affect the global clean energy vehicle space, including batteries and chips.
Yeah. Speaking of Trump, actually, I missed one out of my top 10. Was the I read it off. EU plus US try to shut the door on China EVs with tariffs. ICE software hardware ban. That was one. The other.
Yeah. So this is where you and I are very much in alignment.
Yeah.
Now, to to continue my list, EREVs and PEVs emerge, PHEVs emerge, because
You're more
now,
succinct.
yes,
I try to talk a bit more.
um, well, I made these like bullet points so that you and I
Yeah,
could discuss them, but you've touched on a lot of them already.
yeah.
And just what you just said, I'll continue. U.S. and EU tariffs. The flood has been temporarily dammed, but can it be stopped? So with the EU, I see a clear path for BYD still via the PHEVs. And so the US, I had already made a prediction. And next week's episode, Lay, we're going to make our 2025 predictions. Uh, oh, but we're going to be in Vegas. But
We might have
anyways,
to do one at CES. So
yes, yes.
yeah.
Um, then the Xiaomi breakthrough, we both talked about that. So I won't. Uh, this is where I'll also need your help, Lay. More brands enter. Onvo, Firefly, Mona. Were there any other new brands? Maestro.
Maxtro, whatever.
Uh, and that's the only four that I could think of that were notable. Uh, the U.S. tightens restrictions on Chinese software and the sale of silicon and capital equipment for the fabrication of chips. The records keep falling for BYD. Growth continues for China EV Inc. We had talked about this earlier. BYD plus 41% year over year. Li Auto plus 49% year over year. Xpeng 34%. Neo 39%. Zeekr 87%. And Leap Motor 104%. So now, did that keep up with the market? I'm not sure because we haven't seen the final numbers yet. But you know, the numbers are going the right direction for those companies
Well,
that I'd
yeah.
mentioned.
So the simple way to look at the market is probably roughly 30% growth in NEVs, but within the NEVs, the PHEV growth is doubling that of
Yeah.
BEVs. That's the simple way to look at it.
And
Yeah.
so that makes the Li Auto, or that makes the Xpeng Neo and numbers even more impressive because up till
And,
now they're only selling BEVs.
and I think, you know, an important reminder, I think Li Bin, he understands. Neo is 10 years old. Xpeng is 10 years old. Leap Motor is 9 years old. At a certain point, you got to make money,
Yes.
and you can't keep doing losses. And that's why I say the early innings of and the scale effect will matter. You can't continue playing the bloodbath game at a loss. And I think Li Bin was pretty serious that we're going to try to break even in 2026, and that's a goal that's pretty set. We can't walk back from it. Um, and the number of these companies and brands that are making money is a handful. It's less than a handful, right? It's an important reminder of 100, 200, 300 brands. There's no way they're going to all survive. And that's something to watch, really. Who's going to become the next Who's going to become the next Neta? Who
And I
can
think
step
you just
up?
make a
Uh,
great point, Lay, because 2025 I think is the year that we see a lot of companies fall to the wayside. So
yeah, and yeah.
so
It,
man,
it's difficult, really, to recap a year. That's every other day, every hour. There's something happening. But
I
it,
that post that I'd mentioned earlier in the episode, I patted us on the back. Um, Part of my reflection for 2024 is that I think we do good work. I think we are again two
it,
of the best, two of the most accurate. we lack the PT Barnum style clickbaity headlines, but
Yeah, but
I don't,
I think that
that
yeah, the fact of the matter is we're there. I mean, I went back. I think 2024 was a flash even more faster than 2023 because I went back 4 times, and every time I go back, things somehow just becomes faster because I mean, you're in a city, and every time I come back here, things all of a sudden calms down and slows. Uh, and that's how it felt. I mean, Beijing Auto Show, we did the trip from Shanghai to Shenzhen in an Xpeng G9, which gave us really great insights of why EVs work in China. Uh,
not only
it-
from a range standpoint, but from a spending 9 hours in the car with me only being able to read certain stuff on the instrument panel. The user experience, because as an Ionic 5 owner, I do have issue with the range. I do have the UX is really clunky. There's a child lock, in the analog cars, the child lock was like a switch on the passenger, the back seat doors. Now the child lock is like a button on the armrest of the door on the driver's side. And I've locked my kids in the car on accident because I don't remember hitting that button, but I must have with my arm. And so my kids are like trying to open the door, like, I don't know what happened. So
yeah,
there's still some clunkiness from a user experience standpoint with
but
Legacy Auto.
the thing is, every time, so I went back 4 times. Every time I go back, the next time I always see some kind of improvement. Let's
Yeah.
say ADAS, the capabilities of what the vehicle can do through OTAs. It's always refreshing. And we've been to a couple of places outside of China, outside the US, Paris Motor Show. I went
We
to
are two of
oh,
the few people that are truly global. Paris,
we,
Beijing, LA.
LA, we
So
tried out the Waymo, right? Got an understanding. I tried out a few robo taxis in Beijing quite a few times. Paris was seeing the China EV Inc. Um, I was in Germany a couple of times. Um, I was at CES earlier last year. You'll be at CES next week,
we'll
and
both be at
we'll both
CES.
be at
So
CES. But think about
contact
it.
us if you're interested in meeting up. So
Despite the geopolitical uncertainty, the Chinese will be at CES, and this time there will actually be several OEMs. Zeekr will be officially exhibiting a standalone exhibition.
we have
Great
a
Wall
presser.
Motor, Great Wall Motor will be exhibiting at CES. Uh, Xpeng through their Aero HT, the flying car company, the lidar, the three lidar, big three. WeRide will be there. Waymo will be there. Zoox will be there. Faraday Future will have their FX brand mule car. They're pseudo Chinese companies, right? Because of YT Jia. Uh, the
So,
China factor will be huge again, always at CES. Yeah.
but most people won't know it.
And before you know it, April comes around. It's a Shanghai Auto Show again. Uh,
You and I will be
yeah,
there.
the year just it's not that long to be honest. If we, you know,
I want to get an ET9 and drive that thing to freaking somewhere, man, Chongqing or something. So
ET9 is a tech. What do you call it?
no,
The tour de
actually,
force.
I'll let you drive me, and I'll be in the back seat.
I'll have to take a
So
spin in the Firefly, right? I mean, these are and what there's obviously other great cars. besides, what the ones that
Too
we mentioned.
many. Too many.
Too many.
So hey, we are at 10:07. I know good friend of the show, Conrad Layson, has some comments, and I'm looking at the timestamp. We've answered a few of these already, Conrad. Will CATL and NEO arrive at a battery swapping agreement? That's potentially.
Don't rule that out. From
Yeah.
what I got from Li Bian is that they're actively in discussions about, because I mean, there'll be standardization issues. Something that Li Bin mentioned was NEO was the number 1 battery size, ONVO the number 3, and Firefly the number 5 battery size, similar to CATL's number 20 and number 25, their internal coding of the battery sizes. But I can't rule out, like a Firefly, a small vehicle that could utilize CATL network.
And remember
Yeah.
that there are a number of local
Uh,
Chinese brands that you'll never see in Western markets that could utilize battery swapping in the China market and be much more convenient. So,
and don't even rule out the foreign brands, right?
without
Yeah,
question.
yeah. I mean, they have to. So yeah, so it's not the possibility is not zero that CATL works with.
Well, Lane, I think it's important to note you had mentioned the window is closing. We talked about how the opportunity is kind of sailing away from the legacy automakers. That could be a bridge to get them back into play. They're desperate enough to work with CATL to build a swapping vehicle or a set of swapping vehicles like a GM or a Stellantis. Well, Stellantis has Leap Motor, but maybe Ford. If I am trying to reestablish myself in this market, I am looking at all options, including swapping capabilities in the China market, because number one, it would make my vehicle very attractive right off the bat, even if the UX or the software isn't great. I think it would make it more relevant very quickly in a short period of time. So,
Yeah.
let me get back to some of Conrad's questions. Josh, Happy New Year, sir. Thanks for your post. Conrad says CATL supplies NEO with LFP. That's right, Conrad. Biggest argument against battery swapping in North America is proprietary swapping systems. Yes. And who's going to own those batteries, Conrad? I think that's another thing.
Yeah.
Is Xiaomi the first successful example of a software-defined vehicle?
But I probably wouldn't say they're the first. But I probably will say they're the first from the kind of the IT tech that successfully did it, and immediately with scale. I'll probably say that.
Here's my Conrad, man. We're good buddies, but you gotta stop using software defined, man, because I was just reading.
That's the industry jargon nowadays.
Yeah, but it's terrible and it's wrong, because if you talk to, again, I will point back to how come it's not software defined mobile phone? How come it's not software defined refrigerator? How come it's not software defined television? Because the key is technology companies know if the software and design is effective, you don't know it's there. And so calling it software defined defeats the whole purpose of being great. And software enables great design. It doesn't define it. And so I'm gonna die on that hill, Lay. I'm gonna freaking fight and fight and fight, saying that software defined is a terrible, terrible term. Anyways.
Well, you have to coin a new term then.
Well, okay. I'll do that next week. I will try to come up with a catchy term. Okay,
Yeah.
so Mike, the car geek, is 2025 the year we see a large manufacturer fail? And do large companies close their doors to get forced to merge with someone else? I think that's already happened,
It's already
Mike, with
happening.
Nissan.
Nissan, Honda, yeah. That's
And
yeah.
I won't say that Volkswagen is close to closing its doors, but they were forced into this partnership with Rivian after restarting Cariad 4 times. And leaning into their relationship with Xpeng for software on the China side. So OEM failures. I'm also going to speculate that if GM and Ford can't turn around their operations in a major way in the next 24 months, could we see Ford and GM merging?
Everything's
So
on the table. Let's
it
just
should
put it
be.
that way.
Everything should
Everything's
be
on
on
the
the
table.
table.
Everything's on the table. If I mean, but I think what will happen is, I think that the Nissan and Honda clearly, every region there should be a champion that come out of that region. BYD is already right at the forefront. Volkswagen still is. Toyota out of Japan, Honda, Kia out of Korea, US, Tesla, right? And then, yeah, I mean, you know,
Ex China, Honda, Kia are firing on all cylinders. And we do have to give
we
some
are
credit.
loyal Hyundai customers.
So to give some credit to Volkswagen, they are the best of the worst. They are the biggest selling legacy automakers in EVs. The ID series are the best selling legacy EVs in China.
You know, the two joint ventures, I think FAW Volkswagen was over 1.2 million. The Shanghai Volkswagen brand was 900,000. FAW Audi, I tweeted, was over 600,000 units. These are still significant numbers that
Yeah.
many of these Chinese brands have not reached. So, you know,
That's why I made sure to give credit to the ID
yeah.
series.
So
So
they're still selling, but on an
on
EV
the backs
side,
of price
yeah,
cuts, on the
yeah,
back of price cuts.
sure,
So there's an
sure,
asterisk there.
sure.
So
Um,
this is a pretty long episode. So ready to close up shop?
sure. Well, it's the year-end review, right? So
Yeah. So hey, everyone, this is going to be a very interesting 2025. So Lei and I will do our best this year to be more consistent about posting the audio podcast and doing the video podcast on YouTube. So please, and we don't probably ask this enough of our listeners and followers, but for anyone else interested in your network about learning more about Chinese EVs or global EVs, for that matter, please invite them to subscribe, listen, view this show. We'll be here giving you everything we got in the 2.5. So we will see you all next week. Good morning from Vegas. Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening.
likewise, Happy New Year again.